huge, but it might be like a Chick-fil-A meal with like extra nuggets. It's like a sandwich, fries, 8-count nugget. That's literally it. Go through the rest of the night, train, and then I'll eat when I get home.
Oh yeah, you're under eating like
yeah,
crazy.
I'm probably getting like 3,000 calories tops. Because the
maybe.
meal at night
What do you do at night?
big. Like I'll like go hard, like Wawa hoagie, meatballs, like something else at home.
It'd be because that first meal is less than 1,000 calories.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A sandwich, fries, and nuggets, less than 1,000 calories.
Yeah, that one's small.
So for the second one to hit 2,000 in a sitting, like that's 2,000 in a sitting is like 2 double bacon cheeseburgers and a large fry from Five Guys.
Yeah. So maybe it's under 3. It's probably 25 maybe.
Yeah.
And I don't really get a lot of I don't really drink. I mean, I drink maybe like 1 soda with like the meal, like a small. I'll do like a little like 8-ounce can. It's pretty bad.
Probably like 2,600-ish.
Yeah.
We're pretty much good.
We're in it?
Yep.
Let's just dive right in. David, can you just jump, can you hit that clock? I mean, I'll keep an eye on my phone as well, but what episode are we on? 30?
Yeah, this will be 30.
This is 30, so you're monumental.
Sick.
All right.
It's like Raw 30th, and here we are for this, man.
Yeah.
The 30s are rolling.
All right, guys, we're in it with another episode of Happy Power. This is episode 30. We have Jason Phillips on. He's the owner and founder of the Nutritional Coaching Institute.
That's correct.
And Business Coaching Institute, right?
Yeah.
So we're happy to have him. He drove up from D.C. area.
Yeah, Northern Virginia.
3-hour drive. So we're just going to dive right in. When did you I just want to jump right into the nutrition thing.
Yeah.
We're already kind of talking about my shitty diet. So when did you first jump into the nutrition aspect, coaching, all of that?
Yo, all right, so I don't know how much you know about my backstory. I was anorexic.
Okay.
Right, so 18, I had an eating disorder. I was 118 pounds, and I was working the front desk at a gym. And one of the trainers was like, she saw what I was doing to myself, and she lied to me because I was like, there's a bodybuilder that would come in every day. He was prepping for nationals, and I was like, I want to look like that, right? Like jacked, ripped. And she's like, all I do is training and nutrition. And I was like, well, fuck, can you do mine? Like, can you help me? And she was like, yeah. She's like, go eat 4,000 calories. Damn. And so mind you, bro, like I was probably eating like 500 calories. And she's like, I need you to eat 4,000 calories. And I'm like, all right, fuck it. Like, and it was 2002, so there's no like MyFitnessPal or like apps or any of that shit. Mm-hmm. So I went to Barnes & Noble, I got a calorie counting book, and I started writing 4,000 calorie meal plans, and I followed them every day. And I remember like 3 weeks into it, I looked in the mirror and I was like, all right, I'm not fat. And I was like, this food thing is not so bad. And it was life changing. Like, I don't want to over drama, like, I don't want it to be like drama, like, and I don't want to make a huge deal out of it, but it was a gnarly like low point in my life. Like, I was suicidal. Like, I had no relationships. Like, my relationship with my parents was bad. Like, it was a really low point being an anorexic, and like I overcame that. I was happier. I started building friendships again. Like, I felt like a normal 18, 19-year-old kid again. And so I was like, man, like this health and fitness thing, it can change lives. And I want to use that vehicle to help people. And so my boss at the time, he had gotten his exercise science degree from Florida State. So I was like, I'm going to go do what he did. Went to Florida State, got my degree, exercise science, and like just helped anybody I can. Like, I was that dude, like in college, if you had health and fitness questions, you came to me.
Yeah.
I worked at the supplement store. Like, I helped all the frat boys, like the girls that lived next door. Like, one was like a culinary arts major. I'm like, you cook my food, I'll help you with your diet. Like, nice. I was like that meathead in college.
Yeah.
And man, I just got into it. Like, I loved it. And I always loved like the empirical side of it, not necessarily like the research side. So people all the time, like, I'll meet them and they want to talk like research and like Lane Norton style science. And I'm like, yo, like Lane's a scientist. Like, he knows way more than he's probably forgotten more than I'll ever fucking know. But like empirically, I love to be in the trenches. And so I've tried every diet you can ever imagine. I've documented what it feels like, the shit that you go through, like the physiological responses to it. And I feel like going through so much of that has actually shaped my methodologies. And then ironically, once I go through it and once I understand the physiology, then I'll investigate the science as to why I felt that way, why I performed that way or didn't perform that way. And I've actually backed myself into a lot of the methods that I would say have brought me to a reasonably high level as a coach and obviously building NCI.
Yeah. I feel like I went on a rampage a few nights going through your profile, watching a lot of your reels and stuff like that. And I feel like you're very kind of, I don't know, it seems like applicable information. You know what I mean? Like that's when I like, because some people, they're like throwing all this stuff at you and you're like, you know, it sounds good, but it's just like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about really. You know what I mean? Like how does it apply to like a normal person with a normal job, or even somebody who has an abnormal job? Like, again, we were kind of talking about my diet, and I start my day, you know, I just go. Like I just get up, go. By 4 o'clock, I'm like, I haven't eaten shit today.
Yep.
And then we'll just say Chick-fil-A 80% of the time. Then I finish the rest of the day. I'll train at like 10 p.m. And then I don't eat again until like midnight. And I just like fucking throw down as much as I can.
Yep.
Go to sleep a couple hours later. I'm like, this can't be sustainable. Like, but I don't
Well, it's
know.
sustainable.
Yeah,
it may not be optimal, but it's sustainable.
It's definitely not optimal. But yeah, like, what do you say about some of the nutritional timing aspect? Because that's always like something I hear about people, like nutritional timing. Let's just talk. Let's just use me as the example, and like performance wise, like what would you recommend?
Before we even jump into that, really quickly, like if you zoom out and you look at nutrition, like science hasn't changed since like evolution, right? Like the human body, physiology, it functions the fucking same, right? Like our heart still beats, blood circulates throughout our body, like our understanding of it continues to improve every single day. And the methodologies that we use to manipulate that understanding continue to improve every single day. But like when I built NCI, my greatest challenge was like, how do I take science and rewrite science? And I couldn't fucking do it, right? Like precision nutrition existed, ISSA, like all the other textbook things. And I'm like, there was this massive problem, right? Where all the science in the world was out there, but I'm like, most nutrition coaches, in all honesty, they still suck. And I don't say that negatively. I say it in the sense of like they're super smart, they mean really well, but they can't create a result for the people that are coming to them, which is a massive problem. Yeah. Right? Like I know when I first started, I saw 3 like registered dietitians when I was anorexic before I met this coach. And even though she gave me horrible advice, I would never say give an anorexic 4,000 calories ever, like terrible advice. But like she got in the trenches and tried to understand where I was at, whereas like a registered dietitian was like, oh, you're just got to do this and this. And it was like blanket textbook advice that just didn't apply to me like in the real world. And then, so like that brings me to like your situation. I guarantee you there is not a textbook written that says Collin Whitney comes into your office as a nutrition coach and is running 2 gyms and has a successful business and wakes up and doesn't eat until 4 o'clock and then trains at 10 p.m. at night. How do you fuel this guy? Like there's no book, right? Yeah. And so like you have to be able to take the science and you have to be able to take that into real world application as a coach, take the principles of, you know, physiology, metabolism, biology, all the sciences, and then create real world application. Then you have to connect enough with the consumer or the client to get them to follow that. It has to be sustainable. So like for you, dude, you got 2 gyms, you guys are hosting meets and shit here. Like you're a busy dude. So if I'm like, well, you got to eat at these specific times, you're like, fuck off. Right. And so like, even though I mean well, we have to meet somewhere in the middle of what's optimal and what's sustainable. Yeah. And I think those are always the best diets. So, you know, unpacking kind of where you're at, the first question I would ask you is you get up every day, I think like 8, 9, 10-ish, somewhere in there, so right?
It just varies. Depends on when I
But like late morning, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you don't eat till 4. Is that by choice or?
Yeah. I mean, I've never been big on like waking up and eating right away. I feel like every time I wake up and eat right away, it's just like doesn't settle right, makes me more sluggish, slows me down.
So my question then would be, what are you eating at that time, right? And so I would want to dig in and be like, have you ever eaten a breakfast where you didn't feel that way? And the only reason I'm asking the question is the single biggest thing that we're facing with you right now is overall caloric load. You have, I don't know where you're at like in your training cycle, but I would assume off season unless you're like in meet prep, right?
It was very off season.
Okay, so we're off season right now. So like when I look at a periodization schedule, off season for you, this is strength gains, right? Like you're putting on, you're at least like you're blocked to pursue strength gains, right?
Yeah, I mean, as of now, it's been like dealing with injuries and all of this, so it's even like it's like maintenance. I'm like just trying to like get a little pump in on occasion.
Okay, so if we look at that, like let's change the goal. Then it's recovery mode, right? So if I'm working with you, I think we would agree the short-term outcome is like let's get you healthy so that we can facilitate future strength gains, right? So that's the first step we would take is we're on the same page. So if you come into me and you're like, bro, I'm not PRing, I'm like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like, we had the same conversation that, like, the whole goal right now is recovery. So if your strength stays stagnant, you're getting pumps, but your joints don't hurt anymore, your sleep is better, you wake up with more energy, you've got more focus throughout the day. All right, now we're winning, right? We could probably throw in lab work. We could go purely on physiology, whichever way you wanted to go, but we would jump in and say the sole goal of phase 1 of our program is to facilitate recovery, which most coaches should consider. That's probably where you should start most clients. Most clients come to you with some sort of dietary history, something that just wasn't correct, and they probably have some issues they need to address. I mean, if we think about it, homeostasis is where we are going to make most gains from. Because every time you navigate from homeostasis, your body's throwing up compensatory mechanisms to throw you back to homeostasis. Like, simple example, you go in a calorie deficit, what happens? You get hungry. Why? Your body wants you to eat more to go back to homeostasis. You go in a calorie surplus, what happens? You lose hunger. Why? Your body wants you to eat less to go back to homeostasis. Well, physiologically, it's the same thing. And, you know, when we see powerlifters or we see CrossFitters or we see high-level athletes going out there and they continue to overreach further and further and further away from physiology, what happens? We see injuries. We see, things that we don't want to see. Why? The body is intentionally breaking itself down to bring it back to that, centralized homeostatic state. So the first thing we want to do is recreate that balance for you. Now, once we've done that, we get into the off season. Now let's look at this and say, okay, cool. Have you ever had a breakfast that didn't leave you feeling like that? And if the answer is yes, it's like, okay, cool. Let's start to address that because we need to increase caloric load. I don't like shoving 4,000 calories into a super small window because I think you'll probably feel like shit.
Yeah.
If you haven't, okay, cool. Then we just use a morning fast. No big deal. Probably investigate what's happening in that fast. Are you using caffeine? Is there other things you're trying to achieve in that time? Really innocuous to like the overall profile, but it's something I would want to explore. You say you eat at 4 and then you train at 10. That's a significant window, right? Now, what most people don't understand is it's not as bad relative to fuel as most people think, because it really takes 3, 4, 5 hours for food to actually become that usable fuel, unless you're using something like a high molecular weight carbohydrate, or unless you're like a bodybuilder and you're using exogenous insulin or something like that, right? So really the fuel that's carrying you into the workout is that meal you ate the night before plus that like 6-hour out meal. So it's not terrible that you do that. I would just say, like, how's your blood sugar during workouts? Do we get tired really easily? Do you lose focus really easily? Are you able to stay strong throughout the whole session? If the answer is yes, I wouldn't change a ton around that structure. Then it sounds like you've got a significantly longer post-workout window. I would probably just extend that, make it easier to digest, and then we'd look at like the sleep quality. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's actually one of the things I was going to bring up too, is because, so if I eat, let's just say I eat at 3 or 4, I'm never training before 10.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm deciding because usually, by about 8:30, I'm like, I could probably eat again.
Sure.
But should I? Yep. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Now, actually, I've kind of just opted not to.
Yep.
Because I just end up feeling worse. So
what do you eat if you ate at 8? Like, what would you eat?
Like, it could just be like a single like sushi roll.
Yep.
So like nothing crazy. Usually that like sits pretty well with me, and it's not like I'm not like stuffed. But even that, it'll just kind of have me a little bogged down, I feel like, when I start to train.
So it's interesting. You're seeing two different phenomenons at play, right? So one, if you're going to eat that close to training, we're looking really at blood sugar regulation. That's really all that meal is going to do. It's not going to. It might provide small amounts of immediate fuel, but not a ton, not as much as most people think. What I would opt for if you're going to do that is a protein carbohydrate combo that digests quickly and easily. Like you don't want to be fighting digestion while you're trying to facilitate strength, right? Now, when you train without that, right, the closer you are to a fasted state, the more cortisol starts to rise. And obviously when we go in and train, that creates a cortisol elevation as well. So when we go in with high cortisol, we get in a sympathetic nervous system environment, fight or flight, under the bar, it raises again. You have a shitload of hormone at play, and so you probably feel better lifting, right? And that's what you're describing. You feel better. The problem is that's going to be temporary. You're going to be able to do that 3, 4, 6, 8 months at max. And all of a sudden, you're going to hit a wall. And you're going to be like, why the fuck is it not working anymore? And it's because what happens is you actually run out of your ability to produce cortisol at a high level, right? Physiologically, we would probably see something off in like your DHEA to cortisol ratios. But if we did like a time saliva test over 4 times, you would see like probably not, like less than optimal cortisol timing, right, throughout the body, or just an inability to produce cortisol at all. In the absence of cortisol and in the absence of fuel, you're going to just be weaker, right?
Yeah.
So close to competition times, I would be all about it. Leverage the hormone, feel what it's like to be fight or flight, crush it. When you're really far away from that, I would say eat the food so that you're using fuel way more than you're using hormone.
Okay.
Like a really good example is when I cut UFC fighters. I'll typically have them eat their last meal pre-fight, like 90 minutes to 2 hours out, and it's super light. It's just protein, carbohydrate, and they'll always say like 30 minutes out, I'm hungry, and I'm like, perfect. Because that hunger signals to me cortisol is starting to rise. You got to do it across the octagon that wants to fucking kill you and hope the ref stops it in time. Like, I want you as close to fucking fight or flight as we can get so that you're on guard, so that you're, optimal defense and you're ready to take their head off too.
Yeah.
And so in athletic situations, I'm always trying to facilitate that and take advantage of every ounce of hormone that we can. But in training scenarios, we don't want to do that. And more than anybody, there's a difference in competing and training.
Yeah. That's interesting. So have you started working, like we'll use the UFC guys.
Yeah.
Have you started working with a UFC guy who was doing it another way, and then once you came in and implemented it, he would, like, what was the feedback?
Yeah, so I worked with Luke Sanders, actually, and he had worked with, I won't say names, but he had worked with two other very well-known nutritionists before me. So one I shadowed, I just was there to like, he was a friend of mine. He used to date Becky Lynch from the WWE, and she's a very good friend and client of mine.
Nice.
And so I was just like, yo, I'm gonna come. I'm gonna help out as much as I can. And I was brand new in like the UFC scene, so like I was like, I just want to learn. I want to be around it. And so I like cooked his food for him that weekend. I was his bitch in Vegas like that whole weekend. It was when he fought Yuri Alcantara, and I remember being puzzled by like a lot of the things they were doing. It seemed really excessive. It seemed like nuanced to a level that just didn't make sense. And I remember he had a really tough weight cut. Ultimately made weight. Ultimately like got lost a point in the first round. Ended up getting tapped out. Right. Then I watched his second camp from the outside looking in. Didn't have any advice. I literally just watched. I didn't go to the fight. And I'll never forget, like, dude's got a chin on him, like, and he got hit and knocked out. And I'm like, it was really fucking weird. Like, and I remember the night before, Andy Galpin had texted me and was like, yo, your boy's here. Like, it's tough. Like, it looks really bad. And I'm like, weird. Like, so when he got knocked out, I was like, what happened? He's like, bro, I don't know. And so I asked him, like, his rehydration protocol, and it was just way off. And that's when he was like, bro, like, I see what you've done with Becky. Would you do a fight for me? And I was like, pressure's on, I gotta perform, right? And so I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Shout out to my boy Tyler Minton, who like helped me with like the rehydration. It was my first time. He like verified everything I was doing. But like when I first came into that, I was like, there were so many variables that most people just weren't looking at. It was all about making weight and nothing else. And I'll never forget, I was like, well, if you're making weight at 135, what are you gonna fight at? And he was like, well, 155. And I was like, all right. So, like, imagine you powerlifting, training at, what do you weigh right now?
Like 240.
240. And then you go in, and I need you to do a high rep set, but you weigh 260 pounds tomorrow. What's your breathing going to be like?
Yeah, it's
going to be shit, right? Just from those extra 20 pounds. Not because you're detrained, not because you're weaker or anything like that, just because we added weight in a scenario where cardio is demanding. So I'm like, I need you training as close to fight weight as possible for as long as possible. So that creates the conundrum because UFC is like, you should be within 10% going into the final week. So I'm like, all right, 10%, 135. We realistically need to be like 148, 149 going into fight week. I can hold you at 53 to 55, which is where he likes to fight, as long as possible, calories as high as possible, but show ourselves that we can dip that weight anytime we want. And so what we would do is we'd create dips in his weight, but then I would bring him back up. And for him, mentally, it was he was like, bro, are you sure we're going to make weight? I'm like, I got you. Like, the fact that your body is able to drop weight as quickly and on demand as we want shows like metabolism's in a good place, recovery is there. And he's like, I've never felt so good in camp. Like, this is weird, but I'm worried I'm going to miss weight. And I'm like, I got you. And so sure enough, like, not to, if you want to go into the science of weight cuts, but really there's 4 variables at play when I work with a fighter, and it's the first thing is water intake, because we know when we flood the body with water, we can shut off the hormones, right? Aldosterone and ADH will shut off. Your body will start pissing out extra water. So that's the first variable. We water loaded him a little bit. Now, obviously, you do risk losing electrolytes, so we address that later. The second thing, obviously, is food intake. So we manipulate your carb intake. Every gram of carbs, 2.7 grams of water. We know that. Drop your carbs, we start pissing out more water. The next thing is electrolyte intake. So we could cut out all sodium. You'll piss out more water. And then the fourth thing is your ability to sweat. Now, most people fuck this up because they start trying to sweat too early in a weight cut. Yeah. And so for us, we're like, yo, I don't need you to sweat until the very last day. And so he's like, are you sure I can't sauna Monday? I'm like, you can't sauna until Thursday. Are you sure I can't sauna on Tuesday? No, bro, you can't sauna until Thursday. And like, we went back and forth, and sure enough, he went in, he cracked. It was literally like 40 minutes of like light assault bike in a sauna. He cracked, he was on weight. He's like, this is the easiest cut of my life. Woke up the next day, knockout of the night, Henan Barao in Phoenix. Yeah, like 50 grand bonus, everything. And he'll tell you to this day, best camp of his life. And like, I worked hand in hand with the guys at Fight Ready for it. Even Fight Ready was pushing back on me. They're like, why isn't he lighter early? And I'm like, this is the optimal way, in my opinion. Everybody's going to look at that and be like, yeah, you could bring him down early and blah, blah, blah. Everyone's got a different way of doing it. I'm not saying my way is the perfect way. I'm just saying this way has gotten results for a lot of people. Yeah. A crazy one, I worked with a fighter. I won't say his name out of respect because he's got other coaches, but I worked with a fighter out of NorCal who his cut wasn't going great. And he, like, one of my friends happened to be in the gym with him, and they're like, just call Jason, he'll help you. And like, everything that I was doing was different than what his nutritionist had wanted. And I was like, I'm here for advice, but I'm not here to step on toes. And that's something I'll never do. Like, I mean, it would be like somebody, you giving somebody like warm-up sets or whatever for a meet, and their coach is like, no, I do it a completely different way. Like, you got to roll with what got you here. Yeah. And so I think in that point, the role of a coach is just to give you confidence. Like, I think I was just there as a sounding board. Tell me what you're going to do. All right, sounds reasonable. Like, if it fucks up too bad, I'll manipulate something. But I just became a sounding board for him and honestly did nothing. And he went in and he won the fight. So.
Dang, I feel like with the UFC guys, do you think that's something they're starting to come around to? Because I feel like for the longest time, it's like some of those guys are like blacking out on the scale afterwards, like then they would mention they felt like shit in the fight. There's like, it was always a common topic. Like, UFC is like my favorite sport.
I love UFC, bro.
I don't even fucking watch football anymore. Like,
why aren't we all going to a fight soon?
Yeah, for real. I'm in whenever. But yeah, I feel like they're starting to kind of come around to like some of the better weight cut protocols and stuff like that. Like, when did you notice like how long ago was like when are you still like?
I don't do a lot anymore. And shout out to like Duncan French and the guys over at UFC PI. They've done a really cool thing. They've actually made it free for fighters to get proper advice. And so they obviously open up the Performance Institute in Vegas. If you haven't been out there, it's nuts. Yeah. Like, if we ever go to a fight in Vegas, I'll set us up a tour. It's fucking insanity. And they provide all the food for the fighters through Trifecta. So like, literally, they get all the food to their house. And it's like, eat this at this time. And they have made it so easy. The dehydration, the rehydration, like, it's on point. They're studying shit all the time. They've got several interns in there all like going for their RD. So like, you've got some reasonable talent, like good IQ, but like what Duncan and Forrest and all the people at the PI have tried to do in terms of like raising the bar has been amazing. And you're starting to see the guys that were like half-assed into it, you're starting to see them forced out. It sucks because cutting a fighter was really lucrative, right? Like, I used to be able to get 20, 30 grand for a camp. Now I get $0 because the UFC PI doesn't charge you. So, I think guys like Tyler are some of like Tyler, Andy Galpin, Dan Garner. They're some of like the last few that are, Dan works with Sean O'Malley. And so Sean won't touch anybody but Dan. Yeah. And rightfully so. Dan's amazing, super smart guy. But there's a few that still do it, still charge, and because they've been in the game for so long. I was still new to the game when the PI came around and only had a handful of clients. And to be fair, it's so time consuming, and I'm such a perfectionist. Like, if you're around me during fight week, I guarantee I'm the biggest ball of stress because I don't want them to miss. Like, that's 20% of their purse that's on me. Like, it's 100% on me. And then it's like the worst text to send is like 2 hours before the fight, like, yo, good luck. Because at that point, you no longer have control. I have control of the journey up until 2 hours out. Then it's like you got to go in the cage and you got to do you. And I have no control if you get knocked out or if you knock them out, and that fucking sucks. Yeah. So, but it's fun, man. Like, I love it. I love the science behind it. You know, again, like, I've done so many things personally. I've overhydrated, I've dehydrated, I've fucked around with electrolytes. I know what it feels like. I've gone in, tried to perform, and I think that that's what's allowed me to help guys at the high level.
Yeah. Do you think, like, some of them, it feels like they cut a shit ton of weight?
Yeah.
Like, I love to hear, like, Khabib and, like, Islam, they're at, like, 190 and they're getting down to 155. Like, I guess from an outside looking in, you're like, well, they're doing something right. They're, like, the best in the world.
How about Patty?
Oh yeah, no, that's what I mean. And like, he would. I don't know. Khabib was pretty bad too with some of the fluctuations. But
Well,
like,
Khabib missed weight a lot, and then he met Tyler, and Tyler helped him. So that was the first time. Like, I think Khabib got with Tyler. He won a fight, and then he realized like it matters. Khabib obviously trained with Daniel Cormier, and Tyler was Daniel's guy. Okay. And so I think that like Daniel got Khabib's head on straight, and obviously probably the greatest fighter to ever live, right? Yeah. Undefeated. I wouldn't want to fight Khabib right now, like, but it's it's, I don't know, man. There's part of it where I think that they're fighting at an artificially low weight. Again, like, if you're making 155, you're fighting at 175. So the real cut is to 75 because after that it's all water for the most part. And then it's like, did you get to 75 the right way? Because if you get to 75 the wrong way, 55 is impossible. Yeah. But if you got to 75 the right way, 55 is easy. People don't understand how easy it is to lose 20 pounds of water overnight. A lot of these guys that take fights last minute, they're at an advantage when it comes to the weight cut. They're not an advantage for the fight, but they're at an advantage to the weight cut because it's like, yo, you've been eating and drinking fucking everything. Clean it up for 6 days and then sweat. And it's easy to get the weight off, but your cardio probably sucks. You're not used to being in that environment. And so, like, obviously it is a disadvantage in the fight. But that's why a lot of those guys don't struggle with weight. I remember Chael Sonnen on ESPN was like, yeah, only like, he's like, I'll brag because I lost like 26 pounds in a day. Yeah. And he's like, we hold that shit as like a badge of honor. And I'm like, psychos, man. That's like psychopaths. But it's, yeah. And I mean, I guess the bigger you are, the easier it is to lose. But it's, again, you've been eating and drinking everything inside. I mean, take Chick-fil-A out of your diet and put in vegetables. Take whatever your concoction at like midnight and put in fucking vegetables and drink some water and take some herbal diuretics. Like, how much weight do you think you could lose in 3 days? Probably 20 pounds. Yeah.
I drop weight really quick. That's like, I would always like go into a meet. I'd have a beer the night before, eating like wings, and everyone would be like, you're like 7 pounds over. I'm like, I'm going to wake up right where I need to be. Yeah. And I would literally wake up right where I need to be. Like, I kind of knew where I would drop regardless of like what I was doing, where I was at. So,
and again, there's no nutritionist in the world, I promise you, that's listening to this that is like, the protocol to drop weight is a beer and wings. But that being said, if a nutritionist is working with you and you're like, this is how I've done it, we need to sit down and we need to look at it and we need to understand the mechanism of action. And we need to make sure that we put you in an environment where you're comfortable and where that mechanism of action can continue to work. Because the last thing I would ever do is tell you to change anything that has worked for you, right? Like, there is such a level of confidence that I think we have to observe with lifters, with fighters, with athletes. When you step on the platform, right or wrong, the single greatest like asset you're going to have is your confidence. If you feel solid under the bar, you're probably going to get the lift. Yeah. If you're questioning it because you tried something new last night and you feel a little bit off, you might miss the lift. And I don't want to fucking be the reason for that. Yeah. Now, I might try to get you to like mock a competition like in the off season and try a couple other different protocols and see if we can really get you feeling another level. Yeah. But if we haven't worked together and that's our first meet, I guarantee you that's what we're doing.
What would you say is some of the most common mistakes with the weight cut? I know you already mentioned kind of sauning, using
trying
the sauna
to do
too early.
Too quick, too fast. You have to be patient. I'm a fan of starting 7 days out.
Okay, that's another thing I was gonna ask.
Yep, I like starting 7 days out. The water load usually starts to see the scale go down within the first 36 hours. You can usually leverage that for 48 to 72 hours. So you get 2 to 3 days out of that alone. You'll see the scale go down. And then you have to understand that you have those 4 variables at play, and you only need to use each one individually, not all together, right? So my order of preference is the water load, the carbohydrates, the electrolytes, and then manipulating intake/sweat. But if each one gets you like 3 pounds, I mean, that's 12 pounds, and that's on a lightweight dude. On a bigger person, you get 5 pounds out of each one. That's 20 pounds, and that's super safe, right? None of those are extreme. You're still getting in plenty of proteins and fats. You're still getting in calories. Obviously, you have to change a training stimulus. I think that's probably, if I was looking at mistakes, I think people don't look at like intake relative to training stimulus. None of that would work if somebody was training super intensely the whole week. Right. So like if we go and they're trying to train really intensely all the way up to the fight and I'm pulling out any of your ability to recover, your body's just going to shoot cortisol through the roof and it's going to hold on to every ounce of water. So you have to be able to match up with training stimulus. But I think at that level, it's usually understood. At lower levels, it's less understood. And people think that they can outwork it. So they put, the fucking sweet sweat on and the Abilene or whatever, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna go work my ass off, and I'm like, don't fucking shoot your cortisol through the roof, man. Like you'd be better off chilling and sweating. So probably those are the 2 biggest mistakes.
Would you say there's any difference in like the protocol from like a 2-hour weigh-in? Because
100%.
Okay,
massive difference.
All right, yeah, because like 24 hours, I know, like even just from doing things myself and kind of having an amateur kind of perspective on like cutting, I've still like obviously noticed a massive difference between 24 hours versus 2 hours. So
you have to remember too, it's not just glycogen, it's not just muscles that you're dehydrating. It's the brain that you're dehydrating. And you can rehydrate a muscle very quickly. You cannot rehydrate a brain very quickly. And so in combat sports, like the longer you're dehydrated, the longer you need to rehydrate the brain. And so our goal in combat sports is really, and that's why they all wait till like the last day to do the cut. I'm trying to wait till as late as possible to actually cut. Then I'm trying to hydrate the next morning before the scale. My favorite like mental trick was to always send my fighters to the scale with a jug of water in hand, and their opponents like, what the fuck? And they're like on weight and they're just chilling, right? And I'm like, my guys don't suffer. Like they don't suffer at all. In a 2-hour thing, you can't recover in 2 hours, right? I mean, the first 60 minutes of a long dehydration are very critical, but you're also at risk for digestive issues, and we're all aware of that, and we all plan for that. But if you only got 2 hours to rehydrate, man, you shouldn't be planning for very long to dehydrate, which also means you shouldn't be planning to gain a lot of weight, so you should have lost most of the weight pre-dehydration. It's really a fine line. And like lifters are different. Some people all have wake up on weight, eat normal, like limit the water intake, not eliminate, but limit. And there's a big difference because dehydration can kill performance faster than anything. And I think a lot of lifters fuck that up. I think they're like, oh, well, I'll just eat and I won't drink. And I'm like, that's a terrible idea. If anything, I'd rather you drink and eat less because hydration will give you better performance than any amount of food will. Your body will go back to the day before to get the food. I think that people just don't really plan. They don't really think about it. And it's like, I used to do it with Oli lifters, and I would see Olympic weightlifters go in and they're like sweating their ass off all the way. And then they're like, all right, how do I rehydrate in 15 minutes? And I'm like, you don't. Like you don't. But I'll tell you the secret, man. It's chocolate covered cashews.
Oh, really?
Every PR I've ever like been a part of, I'm like, you got to eat chocolate covered cashews pre-lift and in between lifts. Yeah. It's like my go-to. I don't know why. There's absolutely zero science with that. All right. And everyone's like, what the fuck? And you'll try it and you'll PR your lifts. So
clip that. Is weightlifting 2-hour weigh-ins or are those?
I think they're 1 hour.
I
think they're 60.
Damn. Yeah. I used to see people in USAPL fuck this up all the time, like, trying to make crazy cuts, underperforming every meet, and I'd be like, you're not figuring it out yet? Like, you literally come in feeling like dog shit. Yeah. What do you think's going to happen? You're in a performance sport. Like, you're going to lift your heaviest on a day where you're fucking depleting yourself, dehydrating yourself, so that's wild. Yeah, that's good, though. I feel like a lot of the powerlifters will hopefully get a lot of good info on that.
I think when in doubt, cut less and just lift a little heavier.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, unless you're going for like world records and like
That's-
something's on the line. But I mean, for most of the people that are like listening, you're not trying to break a record. Just lift a little heavier.
That's exactly what
and
I
have
tell
a better
everyone.
experience and
Yeah.
like fuel yourself, eat a little more, like make the most of it, have an enjoyable day.
Yep.
I would say 90% of the people I work with would benefit from that advice more than, hey, here's a crazy cut that we could do. And don't get me wrong, I'm a firm believer everything's possible and I'll make it work. Like I'm good enough on that side and I love it. Like give me a really complex problem. I love solving it.
Yeah.
But I don't fucking like having it all the time.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the people, unless you're actually like competing for the top spot, like you're gonna win nationals or you're gonna break the world record, it just doesn't seem worth it. And then I have like Austin, remember Hung Mai? So Hung Mai, one of my like first clients, we went to nationals, USAPL nationals, like the biggest powerlifting meet for us at the time, and he was way overweight, tries cutting, literally weighs in like 2 over. So they won't let him compete. Ends up, he gets to compete the next day. He just has to go up the weight class. So he ends up competing the next day. He put on a little bit of weight, ends up like finishing like 14th. There was like 100 in his weight class, so it's pretty good. He's pretty solid. We literally looked and seen like where he would have finished the same total in the other weight class, and it was like damn near the same. So it's like competitiveness, like you could have literally improved if you would have came in a little heavier. You would have actually, there's no doubt in my mind he would have finished even higher
had he
in
gone
the
and
higher
fueled
weight
into
class.
that.
Yeah, if he was fueled up properly without all that stress and trying to cut 12 pounds in 2 hours, whatever it was something ridiculous. And it just like,
Well, my whole thing
level,
is this: like you've trained. I mean, how long is a typical training cycle for a meet?
usually for me, I like to get about 16 weeks.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you train 16 weeks, and you do majority of the same shit for 16 weeks: pre-workout, post-workout, intra-workout, whatever you do. And you want to fucking change all those variables in 24 hours, and you expect everything to be better, right? It's almost like in the bodybuilding world, where it's like you prep for 16, 20, 24 weeks, and you're throwing. It can be a planned Hail Mary at the very end in hopes of achieving 100%. And this is where like Lane Norton used to say, like, I'll take somebody at 98% without trying to push for 100%, because sometimes the push for 100% is you go to 102, 103%. And in bodybuilding, that's death, right? You spill over, you look really blurry, and that 102, 103% might as well be 80%.
Yeah.
In powerlifting, it's like maybe you show up 98% because you didn't manipulate all the variables. But most other people that are trying to manipulate all the variables, they're down at like 90%.
100%.
And I'll take your consistent 98% with confidence. It will sometimes shoot you to 100% over somebody that's trying to nail 100% from that 90%. Like you're just taking a leap, man. And sometimes you nail it. Like sometimes it's fucking beautiful and you tell the story and you're like, all the stars align and it's great. And other times you're like, I don't know what the fuck happened. And you're like, I just wasted 4 months of my life. And I would rather avoid that with most people.
That's usually what the caption says after their shitty meet.
Yeah. So I just wasted 4 months of my life. It's like, no, you wasted a day, which caused you to feel like you wasted 4 months. And I hate that for most people, man. It's usually so easily addressable.
Yeah. No, there's nothing worse than you're working with somebody for months and months and months, and then they, get off diet a little bit, or they kind of miss a few things during the prep, and then they get to meet week and they still want to make that weight class. And, I'm usually on board with I'm like, whatever you want to do, I'm going to help you do. You know what I mean? And even if, I mean, it's rare that I'm going to be like, no, we're just not doing it because you're going to shit the bed. Because I want to let them at least for one time, if we fuck it up, then I'm like, all right, remember that last time? We're not doing that again.
Do you tell them that going into it? Like, yo, you might really fuck this up? Or do you just let them experience it?
I'll usually just let them experience it. Yeah, I'll usually just kind of be like, all right, if that's what you want to do, that's what I'm going to help you do. But then after that, I give them that one. Now, the next time I'll be like, well,
let's do it my way.
Yeah, it didn't work last time doing what you want to do, so we're going to switch it up. But I do want to jump into the business aspect a little bit. I feel like powerlifters, hope you enjoyed all the nutrition aspect. I feel like everyone's going to learn a lot from that. But, what was kind of the transition from nutrition coach to you're coaching other nutrition coaches?
Yeah. So 2014, I decided I was going to, make it, right? Like, I dabbled in nutrition coaching probably 04, 05, all the way to 2014, 9 to 10 years of just being a complete fuck up, right? was really intelligent when it came to nutrition, never gave a shit about creating lots of success. Like, I was your prototypical, like, wantrepreneur. Like, wanted success and was like, yeah, like, I want all the shit that comes with success, but I really was, like, lazy as fuck and I wouldn't do anything. And it was, like, November 2014. I went to Colorado. I was with my girlfriend at the time. We were on a date. It was our first, like, travel trip together. Thanksgiving Day, and I'm like, dope, holiday, like, take you on a ski trip, like, I'm going to impress you, this is cool. We go to the grocery store because I got to get my fucking Starbucks. Like, I have to have Starbucks every day. I went for 8 years straight, never missed a day.
Damn, that's
And
impressive.
I honestly only broke it just to break it. Like, and then the next day I started again. So, like, you probably could consider it at this point, like, fucking 11 years.
Damn.
But anyway, I went, and it was like, I get to the front of the line. I order my Americano. It's like $3.76 or something like that, and my card declined. And I was like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "There's no way I'm overdrawn." I'm like, "Something's up." And like, you know, it was a holiday. They're like, "Just take it. It's free. It's all good, right?" And I'm like walking the aisles, and I like look at my banking app, and like, sure as shit, I'm like overdrawn on my bank account, $27.05. I'll never forget it.
Jeez.
Right? And I'm like, "Fuck!" I'm like, I'm overdrawn. I'm on a date. I gotta tell this girl, like, I'm a fucking degenerate, basically. I have no money. I can't manage my finances. You gotta pay for Thanksgiving dinner, and you probably gotta pay for this trip, which is horrible. And I'm like, fuck. For whatever reason, like, we walk all the aisles, we get all the groceries, we get to the front. I look at my app again to, like, just wallow in, like, my own pity. And, like, $500 had, like, cleared in my account. Like, a check that I had put in, like, late the night before, bank holiday. Not supposed to happen. And I'm like, fuck, like, I got to get my life together. And so I never had to tell her, right?
Yeah.
So obviously I went and I paid for the coffee because I felt bad.
Yeah.
Got the groceries, was actually able to get, like, my mom to, like, put cash in my account so I could pay for the trip.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to get my life together. Went home and I was like, I got to figure out the business side. And I did. And that year, within 90 days, I was doing over $10,000 a month. Within 12 months, I was doing $1 million a year.
Damn.
And took that business to over I was the first person, to my knowledge, to take just a one-on-one nutrition consulting business to, like, north of $3 million. I took that to north of $3 million annually. And then in 2017, I was at an event and I was, like, talking to some people, and they were like, you got to take what you do and teach other people to do it. And I was like a certification? And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, well, there's already those out. Like, I can never write another certification. I'm like, especially, like, PN, like, shout out to John Berardi. We're actually very good friends. And I'm like, dude wrote, like, a textbook, full citations. I'm like, I have no, like, I'm lazy, dude. I'm not doing that shit. And they were like, figure it the fuck out. And I was like, dope advice.
Yeah.
And so I left, and I was driving from LA to Arizona. And, like, halfway in the drive, it hit me. I was like, you don't have to rewrite science. You have to teach people how to apply science. And that's when NCI was born. And I went in and I pulled up to my house, ran in the house, like, wrote the outline for the cert. It's never changed to this day. Like, it was that vivid. And put out a call. 40 people were like, yo, I want to do this. I was like, it's $1,000. Cool. Like, I was the fastest I've ever made 40K.
Yeah.
Told my assistant, I'm like, hey, we need to add 2 more sites. She's like, all right, Austin and DC. Announced that the next day. We put 40 more spots to those. I made 120K in 2 days. And I'm like, holy shit. And so in July of 2017, we did our first cert. And it was amazing. And we did them throughout the whole next year. And then people started hitting me up, and they're like, all right, they're like, you're teaching me how to be a nutrition coach. You make millions of dollars nutrition coaching. How do I take what you're teaching me and make money with it? And I was like, I don't fucking know. I was like, do what I do. And they were like, yeah, but, like, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, teach me. And I'm like, no way. Like, no way. Because I had hired the business gurus earlier on, like, when I was a trainer, and I got burned by all of them because majority of business gurus are fucking assholes.
Yeah.
And, like, they'll take your money and they give you nothing. And I was like, I'm not getting into that crowd. And this one kid, I won't say his name, he was so persistent. And he was like, he came to a Vegas event, a cert that I was doing, and he was like, I'm having dinner with you. And I was like, or he's like, I'm talking to you. And I was like, all right, here's the deal. I always go to dinner the night before. You could sit at dinner with me. You have, like, 90 minutes to pick my brain, and that's it. Like, I'll just give it to you that for free. Like, I'll buy your dinner. Like, that's what I'll give you. At the end of 90 minutes, he's like, I'm gonna work with you. And I was like, let me think about it, right? And so I went home, and I was like, I genuinely was like, if this kid pays me, can I make sure that I deliver to him? Because I would feel awful if I ever took money from somebody and didn't deliver. And after like 3 weeks of sitting on it, I was like, here's the plan that I think I would implement to help this kid make money. And I called him and I was like, all right, here's the deal. You can pay me $1,000 a month because that's how much time I'm going to have to invest in this. And if after 90 days you're not more profitable, I'm giving you all your money back and we're done. And he was like, fair. And I took the kid from $6,000 a month to $60,000 a month in like a year and a half.
Damn.
And more and more people kept knocking on the door, and I kept delivering similar results. And I was like, all right, I think I know something. And I started to realize, I was like, if I help more coaches scale their business, I'll have more impact in this world than if I scale my own business. And so I sold my own business in 2020, and I like really tripled down on this. You know, 23 right now? 2021, I lost my co-founder of NCI. He passed from COVID.
Damn.
And it was we had kind of gone. He was the education side, I was the business side. So I had to replace the education side. I'll never replace Travis. Like, you know, rest in peace, dude. Like, miss you, love you. Like, fantastic human being, man. Like, if you ever met him, he had more passion for the nutrition side of things than anyone I've ever met, man. But, you know, got an amazing PhD student come in. He's taken over the education side. Extremely, extremely intelligent dude. He had actually wanted to work for us prior, and so it was just a logical transition to him running our side. And it really allowed me to focus on the business side. And I kind of fell in love with it, man. Like, I've seen, you know, obviously we've taken NCI in 2017 was the inception, and, you know, 2022 fiscal year we did a little north of 12 million. So, you know, we were able to go 0 to 12 million in less than 5 years. And, you know, I think we're on pace this year. We'll definitely do north of 15, but I think we'll trend towards 20 or 30 in the next 2 or 3 years. And I think that's really scratching the surface. So, you know, right now I always say, like, Alex Hormozy's documenting like 100 million to 1 billion.
Yeah.
And he always says, like, he wishes Zucks and Bezos would have documented 100 million to 1 billion. Well, I wish Alex would have documented 0 to 100 million.
Yeah.
So I'm going to document for the world, how do you go from 10 million to 100 million? And that's what we're in right now. So, just an exciting side of life for me. I think that I always need something that challenges me, and I think the business world is evolving, and obviously we've had pandemic and we've had all sorts of crazy shit, and it's forced you to get really good at your craft, and I've enjoyed that.
Yeah. Damn. Yeah. I feel like just to jump back a little bit. So when you were doing, you said you worked up to like 3 million a year. Was that when you were just strictly by yourself?
Strictly
just
nutrition.
doing
Yeah.
nutrition?
It wasn't just me. I had God, how many coaches did we get up to? I think we probably got up to like 8 or 9 coaches on
so you
staff.
had like a team. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say, I'm like, damn.
No, at my peak, I was doing probably 35 or 36 a month. I had 167 clients. It was the highest my roster ever got, and I literally slept 4 hours a night. I would wake up at 4 a.m. to start my call, and I would take calls all the way till midnight. And I joke, it's not a joke, it's the truth, but I was so like deep in the trenches, and I'll never let another coach do this, but this is just what the hustle was like. I never wanted that Thanksgiving day ever again. There's a video of me somewhere back squatting 405 while talking to a client. It's in a Miami gym. It was right after Wadapalooza. The guy's name is Brian Grasso. He's powerlifting right now. I still do his nutrition. We're very close. And I'll never forget. I'm like, yo, I got 405 on my back and I'm squatting. So if it sounds weird for the next couple minutes, like, that's why. And he's like, I love you. Like, let's do this. And, but yeah, man, I mean, I grinded it out. I just did what I had to do. And, but that being said, it was a great learning lesson because I would never let another coach do that. Like, that's the fastest way to tank a business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to handle.
It's the worst idea ever. Like, it was so stupid.
Within the transition from like, all right, now you're gonna come up with like the coaching certification. You said that you did like those 40, then you added like another 40 and another 40, and then you said there was like different locations. So like you made these 40 certifications for different locations, and then you went and actually.
No, so I wrote one cert, and then I invited people. So we capped attendance at the cert at 40 people.
Okay.
So 40 people came. Our very first one was Windy City Strength Conditioning in Chicago. 40 people came to Chicago. We did it in person. Then 40 people went to Austin, and then 40 people came to DC. And so it was just like a one certification class. But really the best takeaway story I could give you on that is, like, this proves I wasn't good at business yet, was my first fiscal year in NCI, we did 1.2 million. My second fiscal year, we did 700 grand. So we lost $500,000 in our second fiscal year. And that's because I had a following of people that were like, yo, you get results. I want to be like you. And then The second year, that following, I had already churned and burned through it. So it's like, now I got to sell people that don't know who the fuck I am. So like, you actually got to get good at marketing. And I was like, what the fuck is marketing? Like, is that asking people for money? I didn't know. And so it was like, I had to figure that piece out. And I think it's like, when I really dove into that, that's when I was like, man, this is fun.
Yeah. What did you dive into to like kind of figure out the marketing aspect? Because I feel like that is kind of like that's it for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, if people don't know you, if they don't see you, if they don't hear you, you can't really sell them anything.
I'm super fortunate. I had some really good mentors. Ironically, at the time, I saw Hormozy blowing up, and this is like before Hormozy was Hormozy. I sent him a message on Facebook, and I was like, "Hey, man, like, you're doing great things. I would love to pay you to work with you." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't work with anybody online, just gym owners." He's like, "But you should follow this guy, Russell Brunson. He's really good with marketing." And that was Alex's first mentor. So I looked up Russell. Fell in love with marketing. Like, Russell is a marketing guy through and through, and I'm like, this is fucking cool. Like, you can actually say this and get people to pay you money. I'm like, that's crazy. And so got into Russell's world, made a little bit of money, and then just had some great mentors, man. Like, I'm a very big believer in mentorship. Like, I spend over $1 million a year right now on it. And you know, I worked with Russell, I worked with Garrett White, I worked with, you know, John Romanello, Craig Ballantyne, Bedros Keuilian. Like, I've worked with all the guys. And you know, they all taught me something, and I took that, and I just wanted to keep growing. I think the biggest mistake people make when they hire a mentor is they put this like cap as to like, I can only get this close to my mentor. And mine was always to like, all right, I want to learn from them, and then I want to outgrow everybody, and I want to continue to outgrow each and every mentor so that I have to get to like the next level. And if you think about that in the world, right, like Tony Robbins didn't have Tony Robbins, like he had Jim Rohn. If you think about like Zucks didn't have Zucks, like Bezos didn't have Bezos, Elon didn't have Elon. And so it's like they had to keep getting somewhere and then going beyond. And like, I just want to keep going beyond. I want to elevate this space and like what's possible for coaches. Because 5 years ago, if you would have told a coach you can make $500,000 a year, they're like, holy shit, like that's crazy. And now I feel like coaches almost feel like they're entitled to make $500,000, which is a gift and a curse. Like, I love that we see that $500,000 a year annually is a very real possibility. And then I love the entitlement, or I hate the entitlement of like, yo, like, where's my money? Like, you got to actually work, dickhead. But so I think it's dope, man. I always want to set that bar, and I want to show people like what's possible. And not everyone's gonna get there. Not everybody should be an entrepreneur. I'm a very, very big believer of that. A lot of people should probably be a number 2 or a number 3, and they should find a company to work for, and they should not be resentful that the company wins. But that's a whole nother conversation that we could go into. But it's, you know, the people that choose to be an entrepreneur, man. Like, it's life is limitless, and I think that's dope, and I think that's what keeps me going every day.
Yeah. I think it's always difficult to find people to kind of help you grow. So that would be, I mean, I know we got a little bit of a time crunch, but like, is there anything that you do in particular to find good people, like find in Austin? Or
it's, you got to have good relationships. I'm a big believer in overpaying talent. Like, any of my top people, you can interview them. I don't think there's any price negotiation. I think, like, I'm like, what do you want to make? And they tell me, and I'm like, cool, done. And because I don't want them going in the marketplace and thinking they could make more somewhere else. I don't want it to be about making money. And so, like, if I feel like you're getting what you want out of your job financially, now it's my job culturally and task-wise to give you the right things in a manner that you enjoy it. And I can tell you that, like, the growth to $3 million a year annually. So what is that? $240 a month, right? $250 a month. It's not that hard. Like, it's really not that difficult to get to a $3 million business. The growth from like $3 million to $10 million, it's people. And I think everybody underestimates how important your culture and your ecosystem and the SOPs that you put into place are for your ecosystem. And so it was learning for me, man. Like, I stayed stuck at 3 million for the better part of a year. Like, I was like grinding at that like $300,000 to $400,000 a month mark, and then like I realized it was people, and I went like 300 to $1 million a month really quick. Like, I went like 1 month was like 300, then I did like 600, then I did like 900, then I did like $1 million. And it was like boom, 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 and it was like, fuck it. It was actually easier because I had people doing the right things. Then as entrepreneurs and owners, our ego gets in the way. And we're like, well, why am I doing less? Why do I feel less important in my own fucking business now? And you have to remove that. That's been the hardest part for me. We do a quarterly assessment with Alex and Layla at Acquisition. And as I was filling out our quarterly form this quarter, we have what's called MITs, most important tasks for the quarters. and I was putting mine. There's only 3, and they all come back to like the marketing and the acquisition. And I'm like, fuck, am I that not important to the company that all I am is a talking face? And then I was like, wait a minute, that's all I should be.
Yeah.
Because behind the scenes, if I have delegated properly and I've empowered properly, our leadership team is doing what they're doing, I should be able to look at those things, quickly address the leadership of the team, and then go be the face to grow the company.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of owners struggle with that. Is you have to delegate, you have to give up responsibility. You also have to understand you need to hire people better than you. And we all have fucking egos. So when you hire someone that's better than you, you're instantly intimidated. And so what do? You either, you shit on them, you don't lead them properly, or you go hire somebody worse than you, which is only going to cap your business. So get your ego out of the way, hire amazing people, learn from them, and continue to lift them up. Pay them really well, give them a great environment to work, and you'll never have to worry about them leaving.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out gym staff, so.
We can have that talk offline, man.
Yeah.
You got a really dope person at your front desk.
Yeah.
I can tell you that. Like, that girl should be running operations.
Shout out to Casey. She's going to be thrilled to hear that. No, she's really good.
In
yeah.
a 5-minute, no shit, dude. Like in a 5-minute conversation coming in this morning, I can tell you from like attitude, attention to detail, watching everybody go out the door, and she knew every single person's name.
Yeah.
I guarantee she probably knows what's going on in their life. Her previous experience and what she's done and the passion she has for being here, like she should be running operations.
Yeah.
And I don't know her formal history, but there should be a growth trajectory to where she's running operations, and then she can oversee the 2 operations directors at the gym and become that manager.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what, if I was advising you, that's where I would tell you to go.
Yeah, funny enough, like we recently just had her take more hours. Like she left another job to get more hours here. We're like talking about how she can kind of like grow, take on a bigger role.
Dangle that carrot, bro.
Yeah,
like 100%,
solid.
like have that vision for her and allow her to have some vision as well. And like you guys continue to collaborate. But as soon as she becomes you here, bro, you're golden.
Yeah.
Now come in here at 10 and work out at 2 because she'll keep everybody away from you.
That would be cool.
Right? And like she will. She'll do the part, or like people talking to you actually becomes enjoyable because the other parts of your day is not so stressful.
Yeah.
Right? Because right now it's just stress. If somebody talks to you while you're working out and you feel like you're fitting in your workout, that's just a stressful environment.
Yeah.
Now your training session sucks. Now the interactions suck, and ultimately the culture goes down.
Yeah.
But if we can put you in a position where that's not the case, that's really winning. And I think a lot of people too, there's a margin game that you have to observe. I mean, we could talk about scale in a whole other podcast, but I think a lot of people, they're afraid to lose margin early. But the reality is the reason you're losing margin early is because you haven't planned to lose margin. And so I think that you really have to know your numbers in business. You have to understand like what is the planned revenue for the next quarter and what am I deploying as part of that planned revenue? Like what burn can I actually deploy against to hire staff? And so in coaching businesses, I'm a big fan of having cash and continuity, and I only allow you to hire to a certain percentage of your continuity. Therefore, every dollar in cash you take in is net profit, and a percentage of your continuity is net profit. So I've got coaching businesses doing upwards of 40, 45, 50% margin, which is unheard of in the coaching space because most coaching companies at scale are doing like 30% margin.
Yeah.
I'd rather work less, have less clients, and make more money than make a shitload of top line and just spit it all out to other people.
Yeah, no,
that's noble and everything. Like you're
Yeah.
creating jobs, but at the end of the day, if I'm putting in the work, I want to get paid too.
100%. Yeah, I feel like we could definitely go on and on.
Yeah.
The information's been incredible. Hopefully we can get you back at some point.
Yeah, I was gonna
if
say
you're
I'm
ever in
only
the
3
area.
hours away, so we can do it again.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you coming on. I know you're a busy guy.
100%, bro.
Do you got, if you want to tell our following where they can find you,
Yeah.
Instagram, YouTube, stuff like that?
Yeah, Instagram is just NCI_CEO_Jason. That's the worst handle ever. But I had people making fake accounts of me and then reporting me saying I was imitating them. So I lost my account for like 3 months, which sucked. So I had to build one that they wouldn't want to take, and now they're doing that shit again. So I'll never message you asking you to give you financial advice or crypto advice or anything like that. I'll probably never message you unless you ask me a question.
Yeah.
But definitely, follow if you found this helpful at all. Feel free to reach out. I mean, the one thing anybody around me will tell you is if you message me, if you ask me a question, I'll answer it 1,000,000%. Like I answer all my own shit. No one's got access to my account. So I'm always trying to help as many people as possible, man. I'm at an amazing point in life where I've done some great things, and I just want to pay it forward. And I think that the trajectory this industry is going is super dope, and to hopefully lead some of that is pretty cool too.
Yeah. No, yeah, I would highly recommend you guys check out his Instagram, even if you want like the short form content. Like, I went hard multiple nights, like 500 videos, I feel like, and it's all like useful information. You just like find yourself like, wow, that was helpful. That was helpful. So I feel like there's not a lot of accounts out there that actually put out value. So make sure you check him out, guys. I appreciate it again, and we'll see you next time.